Hi, I'm Adam Kunzmiller with RPG TV at Gen Con 2015, and I'm joined by Zeke Coughlin with Reliquary Game Studios, and we're here to talk about Clockwork Dominion, a new role-playing game. So what can you tell me about Clockwork Dominion?
In setting-wise, Clockwork Dominion is a tabletop RPG. It takes place in the Victorian English Empire of 1896. We try to keep it as close to history as possible. We take a few steps away from reality to create a very dynamic world. So the technology in the game is much the technology of 1896, except we'll take what is rare or unique and just take a step further. We'll make it more ubiquitous in the world. So there really were clockwork computers in 1896. Charles Babbage missed the mark, but some guy in Sweden invented them 15 years later. So in our world, there are more of them. Mm-hmm. There really were clockwork automatons. I think we know of 2, but now there are thousands of them. And so we try to create a plausible world of high technology so that it's not something where there's, huge amounts of fantastical technology. It's more grounded in a real 1896 feel. That being said, the item creation system in the book allows the players to create whatever they want. In playtest, people created everything from sticky grenade guns to steam-powered Iron Man suits.
Cool, very cool.
So
you were telling me earlier this is a completely original setting and system. Mm-hmm. So that in addition to being set there, what kind of things are the players going to be doing? What's going to be motivating them?
Well, the cosmology of the game is based in sort of a deistic god who created the universe. So when the god came upon the earth, it was a formless void. We call that the Pontus, the primordial chaos from which all things were created. And because as the world was made, it was set in motion according to some sort of divine plan that nobody understands, we messed it up. And the clockwork is broken, and it is now slowly crumbling back down into the chaos from which it was made. And so what happens is we use the Pontus, this oozing primordial chaos seeping through the cracks in reality, to be the descriptor, the reason why all of these historical phenomenon happen that no one can explain. So when frogs fall on London, when it rains blood, we found a whole codex of instances it rained blood in Europe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we found some nasty
crazy
stuff. But one of our researchers found a 3-headed hydra in Bolivia. I mean, obviously a genetic anomaly.
Right.
But I mean, the thing sounded like a 3-headed dinosaur that was eating villagers. And the king actually sent out a raiding party to slay the thing, and they put it on display. So I mean, weird things happen, finding a coelacanth. But for us, we don't try to explain them through science. We say the Pontus rises. This is chaos reclaiming creation. And so a lot of the play is, how do you interact with that? Mm-hmm. There are witch finders in the game world that are servants of the crown who literally go out and try to thwart these things that rise from the Pontus, protect people from meteorological Pontus events, and try to restore order. And of course, the British Empire believes that it is the order the world needs.
Of course.
I mean, the British Empire is, the world would be lucky if we conquer it all. That way the Pontus wouldn't be able to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And they have a very domineering aspect of it. In the game, you pick a pursuit. And that's basically how you deal with the various ways the Pontus interacts with society. And one of those ways is, we don't care. The Pontus is happening so slowly. It's like global warming meets the nothing from the never-ending story. There are people who are going to not want to interact with it at all because the eventual dissolution of reality is going to happen so long after they're dead.
Right.
And don't care.
Interesting. And so what sort of capabilities do the players have? What can they do?
Well, I'll talk about Bloodlines.
Okay.
There are 4 basic bloodlines in the game for characters. The basic is pure blood humans. And that means you are a part of the clockwork. You were designed with a purpose, and that purpose gives you this ability to break the rules. Some sort of ability to use one of your skills in a way for which the maker designed you in the world. And so that's their ability. And then we have Beast Folk. Beast Folk are from the island of Dr. Moreau, which is a Victorian novel. You're familiar?
Mm-hmm. I think I saw one of them earlier while I was thumbing through. The guy had like a wolf snout.
Yeah, and there's also the lead for Chapter 5, the opening picture, is Beast Folk with orangutan arms. There he is.
Yeah. Very cool.
When we moved from alpha to beta, people were actually arguing that we should take the Beast Folk out because they weren't plausible history. And then my wife, the surgeon, actually said, I like these guys. You can't take these out. and she did a 15-page thesis that she turned into us on the history of xenotransplantation, starting with the 15th century, going all the way through today, what immunosuppressant drugs would have been available and necessary to make this work.
Oh, wow.
And so we kind of stole the history from the island of Dr. Moreau, used the science that she provided, and worked them into the world.
Nice. Very cool.
And then, of course, Victorians are infatuated with fairies, changelings, so we draw a lot from Grimm's fairy tales and bring that aspect into the game. You can play a changeling, which means somewhere in your history you have a fae in your parentage. When that gives you glamour abilities, illusory magics. And people in the game world do not trust changelings for that reason.
Okay.
The final bloodline is the Nephilim, which we take right out of the Bible.
Saw one of those earlier too.
There you go.
Yeah.
The Nephilim are children of fallen angels. We use the Jewish Enochian tradition from the Book of Enoch and a little bit of Genesis, where angels fall because they quit. They see men and they're like, we want to live like them. We don't want to do all this stuff.
Right.
We want wives and fields. And so they quit and they go to Earth, but then they start teaching men things that man was not meant to know, like magic and astrology and all sorts of things on how to make weapons. The Nephilim are the descendants of those angels.
Okay.
And as a player, you can play them. And Nephilim are pariah. And as you play the game, if you can behave very purposefully, you'll look mostly human.
Right.
If you lead a very balanced life, the more chaotic or unbalanced you get, you start looking more demonic or more angelic, and then the witchfinders try to hunt you down.
Oh, so just by nature of your bloodline, your behavior affects your appearance.
Yes.
Very cool. Interesting. I also noticed that this is a diceless system, it seems.
We do not use dice.
All right, so let's
We
go
use
through
cards.
that. How's that work?
May I move the book?
Oh, of course.
I'm just going to show some cards.
Okay.
So we do not use dice, we use cards. The core mechanic is an aptitude plus skill minus difficulty mechanic. Then you draw a card, much like you'd roll a die in a normal game. It's very simple, easy to get. The cards let us do a lot of other things, though. Like you'll see these words at the bottom. Those are conditions, and those allow for the narrative effects of conflict. Like in our game, we don't use hit points. We use a concept called guard in physical conflict.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like dueling. You know, if you're going to duel, we're all fencers.
Sure, of course.
If you're dueling, you're not just attempting to stab your opponent. You're trying to work them, open them up, reduce their guard, and when their guard is down, you stab them. And in this game, when you stab someone, whether you're doing it with a saber or a pocket knife, if you get them in the lung,
It's never fun being stabbed.
it doesn't matter.
Right.
But if you do well in the game, rather than just lowering someone's guard, you can also apply these narrative effects, which really add some dynamics to the conflict.
So are these cards that players keep in their hand, or are they drawing at random?
When you do skill tests, you just draw from a central deck. Everyone at the table uses a single card, or a single deck to draw cards from. But let me show you how conflict works. I'm going to deal you in, if that's okay.
Sure.
So in conflict, what would happen is, I would deal you 4 cards.
Okay.
If you're really good at tactics, you might get more than that. We'll say I'm a player and I'm taking 4 cards too. So you look at them. You want to take your best card. So if you have a negative number that's pretty low, you want to discard that to the center of the table.
Okay.
And then you lay these cards out in front of you.
Oh, this is not going to go well for me.
But you'd be surprised.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
So what'll happen is, so I got the 5. I got the highest card on the table, so I'm going to go first. So I flip my card.
Okay.
Now I get to act and say I'm going to attack you. So whatever happens with the attack, I draw a card, I resolve my thing, and you're going to be like, you know what, I want to react to you.
Okay.
So you take one of your cards, and it doesn't have to be your highest, it can be your lowest. So you flip it, and now we're in an exchange. And so say you have a gun and I have a knife,
Okay.
and I come at you. You have a much longer reach than I am. I initiated.
Right.
You're going to shoot me before I hit you.
So even though you started because I have a gun,
right.
you know,
That's attack
have fun
priority.
running towards me while I shoot at you.
Exactly.
Right.
And we call that attack priority. The longest reach gets attack priority. If it's tied, the acting character gets the benefit of the doubt. So you can see how instead of, the thug attacks you, wait. Have you ever taught someone to role play? And they immediately want to do something, and you're like, wait, and they're like,
Wait, it's not your turn.
So
You're 4th in the initiative.
Exactly. And so you're no longer waiting for your turn to act, you're responding to things as they're happening. But the cool thing is at any point in time, I flip 2 cards. I break initiative and I go right now.
Okay.
I jump in front of the bullet to save my paramour. I
nice.
leap into the fray and stop the wizard from raising the demon that's going to eat London.
Now, what if 2 people want to do that?
Then it's whoever has the highest card they flipped.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
And you can't react to interrupts.
Gotcha.
So it allows for combat to be, instead of, I go in four moves from now, I'm going to go to the bathroom and grab a drink.
Right.
It's
right.
now, I have no idea what's going to happen. And players are glued to the table.
Sure.
And you can do all sorts of interesting things with the cards. What we do typically, if you're at that moment, that crisis moment, right before something awesome happens, usually we take the deck and we'll be like, all right, you ready for this?
Pick a card, any card?
And then players are like, ah! But because the card numbers are so large, when that player flips that card, everyone at the table sees it, and you get whole interaction from groups cheering or booing. I had a con game yesterday where somebody drew, there's one card in the deck called Doom.
Oh, no.
You are doomed to fail. So, it's the end of the campaign, they're in this airship, it's kind of going down, all they gotta do is pilot it to shore. The game is over.
Pick a single card.
He drew the Doom card, and of course everybody can see it, and so everyone just, there's this hush. And then they all look at me.
Like, what happened?
What happens? And the cards have that kind of effect.
Very cool. Very cool.
And I will say that there's a social conflict system that integrates with the physical conflict system.
Okay.
There's no stress or hit points or anything like that. You have a disposition track. It's 5 levels from hostile to favorable. And as I succeed against you socially in like a conversational attack, I can move your disposition. No, for PCs, a lot of times this is just role-playing advice.
Right.
You are now favorable toward him. Don't be mean.
Yes. But for an NPC, huge implication.
You can change their mind. You can change a PC's mind, but there are outs for that.
Right.
You never want to force a PC into something. And then in the intermingling, in social attacks and physical conflict, players can intimidate opponents, demoralize them, do all sorts of things that make them effective in physical conflict, even though they don't know how to shoot a gun or swing a sword.
Right, right. Cool. And what kind of classes are there, or major character types? We
have a list of professions in the book, but mostly, since it's Victorian, and character creation is linked to where you come from.
Oh, okay.
Because it's Victorian, and who your parents were matter a lot. So you choose a background. And so, like, were your parents involved in law enforcement? Were they peers, like noblemen? Were they landed gentry? Were they laborers? Were they criminals?
Right.
And you kind of like, and it's not just who your parents were, it can be anything, any experiences that led you to be who you are. That's what your background is. It defines your social class in the game, how much money you have, and how many assets you have to spend in character creation. And then, and the books just has a list of what we call professions. And they're just examples of what characters can do. You can be a witch finder and work for the crown and hunt down horrible chimera and aberrations that rise from the Pontus. You can be a soldier or a police officer or a debutante or a nobleman, or, I mean, there are some campaigns where you can ignore the heavy conflict entirely and engage completely in high society Victorian politics.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we've had games, everything from dungeon delving in the tomes below Edinburgh, where you are just literally going through room by room, destroying aberrations that fester there, to situations where characters are mostly interested in marrying up, because it changes their ability to interact in society.
Very cool. Well, once again, that was Clockwork Dominion. Thank you very much, Z.
Thanks very much.
Pleasure.